Hey YouTube, it's Lisa doing a face-to-face mid-month May check-in. This is just going to be a musing from my desk kind of video, or I should say from my kitchen table. I'm glad I didn't get a lot of blowback from my earlier release in May when I talked about burnout. And thank you for viewers who made comments of positive comments. Thank you so much about the state of my mind, my mental state these days when it comes to YouTube, more so than anything. I will still continue to generate content, so stay tuned. I've got stuff to talk about today. So I'm going to do a top-down view, but I did want to do a quick face-to-face to say thank you so much for all those that did comment on it. It wasn't a lot, but it gave me enough encouragement. So let's do the top-down view and get into it. Talk to you soon. Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking me out. If you're a new timer, if you are a returning subscriber or constant viewer and don't subscribe, thank you for coming back. Like I said in the intro, this is a general musing, kind of meanderings from my desk, or I should say from my dining room table. Today I'm going to talk about a few things. I'm going to talk about where my fountain pens are at in the month of May, midway through. We're actually a little bit more than midway through. So I'm going to go into that. I'm going to talk about what I will call my plotter knockoff with the Woozy, how that's going. And then I'm going to do a little bit of booktubing, as it were. So those three things are the main things that I want to talk about in the video, but let's get into it. So the Woozy, this is working out really quite well. I'm glad I haven't deep dived into buying the plotter cover yet, but I do like the form factor of this. This has been working out really quite well. The dashboarding, I've put more stuff on the back to like kind of just earmark things on the go. I've been keeping my TBR list in here for my book reading, and then I've got in here what I did with the last video. I think I was talking about my plotter inserts that I bought. So I took some of the paper from that and I was able to print off the Etsy templates that I was using on that, and just basically creating pages for my plotter itself for the weeklies, so that I would have some kind of format for the weeklies, and this is working out really quite well. The spacing of these boxes is just enough for me to get kind of like the key things. Let me make sure you guys can see this in frame. These key things that I need to get done are getting done on a weekly basis. So this kind of format for me is working out really quite well. And the project folders, again, are working out well. And then I've got some more, I kind of have like this spacer thing, so I know how to like actually print those, because printing that was quite the ordeal. And then I just kept one of the envelopes from the red folder that I had that I was using from Amazon in the back here, and then I have the lifter. So this is working out really, really well for me. I'm liking throwing this into my bag and taking this with me on the go because it's nice and compact. As I kind of go through and archive these, the things that I have in here, I will be putting that into more inexpensive like folder archive, kind of like what Rihanna from her channel, she uses from Amazon. They're just inexpensive plastic ring archive things. All right, so May's inkings. So I retired, I think, excuse me, need a cup of coffee, sip of coffee here. Oh, it's a little chilly here. I've got most of my pens. I retired 2 of my pens, and I had to do some swapping out of some things. So as I was going through my pens for my currently inked, I've gotten rid of I switched out my Sailor Moon, which was that white cream colored pen. I switched this out with the this is a Genhao Pro Gear knockoff pen. I switched that ink out just because it wasn't really flowing very well in that pen for some reason, but it's flowing really well in here. So this ink, which was the Tatcha ink is now in this pen, and I still feel like it's a really good pairing, and I really do like this Jinhao. So there's that. And then the Leonardo had the 1.5 stub nib in it. I now have switched that one out for a Leonardo Fine, and again, that Noodler's ink is actually working out really well in this Momento, Leonardo Momento Prongla Plume. Really enjoying this pen now that I've got that switched out, and the 1.5 was just way too broad for like everyday writing anyhow. So those are the two big changes on my currently inked front. These pens are still the ones that I'm using. I'm still writing with and trying to get through my TWSBI Mini that has Yamabuda in it, and I'm still writing with my tried and true Kaweco Perkeo, and I'm actually using my Mooman A1. So let's go into step 2 of fountain pens, and that kind of leads me into, I wanted to have a discussion or do a video kind of quickly on fountain pens that I thought were beginner brand friendly, or people that are new into fountain pens. If you're one of those individuals and you're kind of looking at fountain pens that you think you would be interested in, or where to leap off into the void or the rabbit hole of fountain pens, I've got 5, and I've got a couple of honorable mentions. So, like I said, I'm using a TWSBI. I would say beginner fountain pens probably should not run you probably more than $75. So anywhere from $5 to $75 is going to be this range for me. I'm using the TWSBI is going to probably be on the higher end of all the pens that I mentioned, especially this Mini. But I love this pen because it is very travel friendly. It has a very large ink capacity. This one on the Mini, once you take the top off, it twists on the bottom and it posts that way. So that's a very nice feature of that pen. I've got this actually twisted open a little bit more than I need to. But yeah, I would say my TWSBI is on the top of like the price range for me. If you want to come down on a lower grade TWSBI, you can get these, the Eco. The Ecos are fairly inexpensive, very colorful colorways. They have different, a lot of different colors. This one is the special edition, so this one's a little bit on the higher end of the price point, but they usually run about $35 to $45. You can usually find them on Amazon quite easily, as well as all the main kind of fountain pen companies, Yoseka, Goulet, Gold Spot, etc. They all kind of carry TWSBIs. So they have the inexpensive Ecos. They have some special edition ones. I've gotten rid of over the years a lot of my TWSBIs, but I also have ones that are also special edition, like the black or the smoke and rose gold, the Draco, which is harder to find because they sold that like 6-7 years ago. The Precision is another TWSBI that you can get, but here's like one of the more inexpensive like TWSBI fountain pens that are like just the regular black versions, and these are piston fillers, so they're very generous with ink capacity, and they're just easy to find, and they're very easy to use. And I think from an inexpensive one, like I said, these are going to be more on the expensive side, but these are the TWSBIs that I still have left in my collection. So those are the TWSBIs. I would also say the next pens that I would recommend, and I only have one, and I keep writing with it all the time, and it's become one of my favorite ones, and this is the Kaweco Perkeo. This is a great throw in your bag. It can get replaced if it gets lost and or stolen, unfortunately. It comes off, it's a snap cap. I can put a cartridge in here, or I can do a converter. I just use it with the cartridge because it's just really easy for me, and it can hold an additional cartridge in the body of the pen, and it's just always, this pen writes beautifully. And this one I think is a fine, but it writes like an extra fine. So there is some inconsistency with Kaweco nibs, unfortunately. So sometimes they're hits, sometimes they're misses, but they're easy to swap out and they're fairly inexpensive to replace. So this is an honorable mention because I am talking about Kawecos. They're a German brand, so they do write more in a broader sense. I have a whole bunch still of Kaweco Sports, and they run from the plastic models, and these are fairly inexpensive, running in the 20 some odd dollar range. I have a few ALs, like this rose gold in AL. These tend to be in the $60 range, but they're really nice writers, especially if the nibs are consistent, or when I say consistent, I mean that they write well. There's some special editions in here, like the Black Crystal Sport. That might have been a little bit of a bump up from like $27 to maybe $40. And then they had the special edition, the art pen that came out last fall into winter. I bought this one. I've got to get the nib replaced. This I got an extra fine because I really wanted an extra fine nib because I wanted to make this an everyday writer. This is where I'm talking about the nibs are inconsistent with Kaweco. This one was a disappointment. This nib does not write well at all. And this pen, as a special edition, was a 3-digit pen, so it was over $100. It was like around the 140 range when they came out with this pen. And this one has been an epic fail from a nib perspective, not from a design and body perspective. That is beautiful. This pen is absolutely gorgeous, but the nib has been a disaster, and I'm kind of bummed out for the amount of money that I spent. I think that Kaweco needs to do a better quality assurance job for especially the pens that are coming out over, $40. You need to make sure that your nibs are smooth at least and that they write really well. So that's kind of like the disappointment in the world of Kaweco with the nibs. But I do love their pen bodies nonetheless, and you can get, as you saw, a lot of colorways. Another honorable mention, or no, I shouldn't say another honorable mention, one of the other top 5 pens is this Moonman A1 pen. This is a adjacent or a knockoff of the Pilot Vanishing Point pen, but this pen writes really, really well. Moonman did a really good job with the design, form factor, the similarity to a Pilot Vanishing Point, and you can switch out the Pilot Vanishing Point nib unit and put it into this one if you wanted to kind of get there. And I'm trying to see, because it looks like in the light, and I just think it's the light that I'm seeing, it looks like some of my finish is wearing off, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is, but I don't think it is. I just think it's the light that I've got shining off of the ring light for my camera here. But this pen writes beautifully, and this pen is a fraction of what it would cost you to get a Vanishing Point pen. I think this one ran $30, and it was quite the rage when it came out in the journaling community. For quite some time, people were talking about this pen. But when I want to carry a Vanishing Point like pen for travel, I take this one, so I don't have to worry about losing my Vanishing Point or getting stolen. So this is a great alternative to taking a higher end Pilot 14 karat gold nib pen with one that's a stainless steel model and similar likeness. All right, so there's that one. So we've got the Perkeo, we got a Twisby, we've got the Perkeo, and then the Jinhao I mentioned before. This is another, it's an honorable mention, and I'll put in my Kaweco in here. So these are the kind of top 5 pens with 2 honorable mentions so far, I should say 4. And then the last one I would say is the case that I kind of keep my kind of common pens that I kind of throw around pens. I've got Pilot, I've got this one, the Kakuno, which I kept saying that was the other one, which was the Kaweco Perkeo, which I got completely wrong. The Kakuno is a great starter pen. Now this is a starter pen price that I think, if you're willing, I think these run $15 or so. Very easy to afford. They write beautifully. They're great for travel. They're lightweight. They're good for EDC. Throw in your bag. I have two of them. I have this one and I think an extra fine nib, and I think I've got the other one in the, they only come in medium fine, I think is what they can come in. And I've got one in a medium and one in a fine, and I interchange these around all the time. But these are great, throw in your bag, everyday carry kind of pens. The other pen that I want to mention as a top 5 is the Pilot Piera. I've got two of them of these as well. These are more on the smaller side. They're more like the Gin House. They're kind of small like the Gin House. Do like that. So they're like that. They're similar size. I think the Gin House got it beat by just a finial end, just a little bit. But these are great writers as well. I find that these are better than actually the Metropolitan. I'm sorry. I just did not love the Pilot Metropolitan. A lot of people do like it. It's a little bit heavier weight pen than these. These are pretty much 100% plastic. So if you want a metal pen, you can get the Metropolitan. My Metropolitan, which was my first pen, I just wasn't in love with it, and I did sell it. But, you know, that's another option as an honorable mention too, is the Pilot Metropolitan. But I would say actually, if you're like brand new and you're thinking that you're getting cringy already over like just spending $15 for a fountain pen, go with the Kakuno and then the Piera, and then get a Genhao, because these are very low barrier entry points for fountain pens. And then you can work your way up to, and the Kaweco, the plastic sports, and then you can kind of work your way up to the Twisbys that are a higher end kind of class category in price. But these Genhaos and the Perkeos are very affordable fountain pens. So I would say, just to put these in order of rank, because I did them out of order and I apologize, I would do the Kakuno, I would do the Piera, the Kaweco, I would do a plastic Kaweco Sport. Let me just throw out one of these, a plastic Kaweco Sport. Then you might want to try the AL Kaweco Sport, which is aluminum. The brass and the bronze are a little bit more expensive. This is the bronze. I don't own the brass. The Genhaos are up there as well when it comes to cost price point. So I'm kind of doing the cheapest or the most inexpensive ones on the top, and they get more expensive coming down. And then I would do probably this A1 from Moonman next. And I would then probably go ahead and pick out a Twisby Eco that has the generous colorways, and then I would go with like the mini. So I'm gonna just kind of swing that over that way so that you can see. So that's how I would probably go from most inexpensive here at the top down to a more substantial price point, but still under, for the most part, I think all of these are under $75 or at least $100. So if you're getting into fountain pens, these are the kind of pens that I would kind of suggest that I would tell somebody to buy. All right, so that is the musings on the how to get into the world of fountain pens from a cost perspective, and how to not kind of lose your shirt right away if you're not really sure. I'm just going to move those all to the side. If you're not really sure you want to be in fountain pens. And now I'm going to move over and talk about books. March was a disaster month for reading for me, and I've kind of made tracks in the month of April, May. Definitely May, actually. April, I kind of picked up steam and I got more fuller-fledged reading in. But May has been a banner month, and I have some books that I've already got one that's a DNF, so I'm kind of going to go through what I've kind of got in the pike here. I've read 5 books already in the month of May. I'm not including, well, the DNF. The DNF is the DNF. Let me just go into my month of May, because I was kind of like, wow, I read one book in one day, or I listened to it in one day because I just could not stop listening to it. So I started off the month of May with the book, and I'm going to zoom down so that you guys can see this, and I'll try to actually do one better and get into my Fable account and show you a book cover so that you can kind of see this live time. I'm going to see if I can find a way to zoom this up. I don't know if I can. So, all right. So the first book that I read in May was The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Davy. This book was really, it was good. It was a little bit predictable, but it was a really good book. And the ending was there was a slight plot twist in the end. Like, you just didn't really know how it was going to end. But overall, I really did enjoy the characters. The setting was realistic, like modern day United States. So there was no fantasy there. There's no fantasy at all. This was basically like mystery fiction as a genre. The characters were believable. The teenager was such a teenager that I think that when people read it, if they have a teenage daughter, you can kind of understand her POV, but it's basically a one-person POV told through the main female protagonist's character. So that book I would still recommend as a read. It's solid. It's got a good pace to it. It's not too slow. Laura Davy does a really good job of hopping timelines in the story. So I really did find that enjoyable. The next book I read was from Tracy Deonn, and it's Legend Born. It's part of a series. I don't know if this is going to be a trilogy. I think it's going to stop at a trilogy right now. I think it is. She's a Black female author, which is unusual in the world of sci-fi fantasy. So that was very appealing to me. I definitely wanted to read her. This is a YA book all the way. But I found it to be really, really enjoyable. I'm actually looking forward to the second book in the series. So, again, this is based off of a character who discovers that she has magical abilities, and trying to figure out the passing of her mother, because she's suspects that it wasn't fair play. So I'm not going to go into too much more about that, but this book was, again, I thought a solid read. I think I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars because I think this was Tracy Deonn's first book, and I think that when you can engage your reader, or at least me, I was totally engaged in this. I never was like, I was kind of like, oh my God, because people are young, and so young people do what young people do, but I was young once too, so I could kind of relate. So I don't try to judge that too harshly as being an adult, a more mature adult reader reading a YA book. For what it is, it was good for what it was. Next off, I read Remarkable Bright Creatures from Shelby Van Pelt. I really enjoyed this book. This book was kind of whimsical, kind of a little bit magical, but really well written. And I just really enjoyed the author's writing of this book. It's not coming off as fantasy or sci-fi or anything like that, but it's considered literary fiction. I gave it a 4.5 stars too. I really did enjoy this. It's about a woman she's an older woman, which was kind of a nice change from people that I've been reading. She was an older woman, and I mean mature, like late 70s, early 70s, who never kind of never, how can I say this? She never overcame the loss of her son and how he passed away. And she works at an aquarium in the Pacific Northwest outside of Seattle, and she ends up developing this relationship with all things an octopus. Now, some people are like, oh, great, read it. It's actually worth the read. It was very enjoyable and also good pace. So I'll just leave it at that. So I finished that book up in the month of May. Then I read, you can't really see this very well and I apologize, but I read Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. She also wrote The Starless Sea, which I absolutely enjoy. I just love her writing style. This book was really a good book. I gave it a 4.5 stars. The logic of the book sometimes was a little so that's why I gave it more of a 4.5 stars. There's a little bit of a romance, but the romance doesn't really pick up and become more of a driver of the story until the second half of, I would say, of the book. But it's mostly, it's fantasy. So, and it was really, really great book to read. Nonfiction. Oh my God, this nonfiction book, I actually can show you the book because I actually bought this book because I was hunting all over for it for the month of February. Which was Black History Month, which I really wanted to up my game in Black History Month reading. James Baldwin, The Fire Next Time. This book, everybody should read this book. I feel like about this book like I felt about Ida B. Wells' autobiography. It should be mandatory reading, and especially where we are at in the United States at this point in juncture. This book is a phenomenal read. His writing is just masterful. So I am on Fable. If you want to find me on Fable, or if you're interested in finding me on Fable, I'll put my links below in Fable. But I really do believe that this is probably it's going to be one of my all-time reads, and it's going to be one of my best reads I can tell already for 2024. So just read it. It's one of those things that it's kind of his essays on kind of the state of where he was at in his time, and he wrote this in the 60s. So, but he's passed away, of course. But I shouldn't say, of course, you might not know. He's passed away, but he also, his timeline goes kind of back to almost like early 1900s. I would say probably he picks it up from like the 1930s forward. So it's a very interesting read. My one DNF that I have so far, I try to get through this. The Wind, the Sand, and the Stars. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I'm hoping I'm not butchering the Exupéry. Is the author of The Little Prince. I thought I would enjoy his essays talking about his time as a pilot before he wrote The Little Prince. He was a pilot that delivered mail from like France to all the way to the Sahara in Africa, Morocco, that area, that region of Africa. Anything that was, I would say, a French colony, basically, given how that went down. With colonialization in France into the African countries. He talks about his travel in this. I might pick this book up again, but right now I'm not in the headspace to read this book. So right now it's a DNF. I have not finished it. The other book that I've read in the month of May so far is The Lost Bookshop. And this book, I'm going to just bring this up so that you can see it. This book, oh my God, this is the book that I listened to in one day. It's magical. It's definitely, I would say fantasy, magical realism is the genre for this. It's 448 pages. This book was phenomenal. The writing of this book was so engaging. I could not stop listening to it. I mean, at one point I was listening to it and reading it with my Kindle at the same time, which I commonly do. But this book was, oh my God, it was really, really good. It is character and plot driven. The romance is definitely, there is a lot of romance going on in this book throughout the book. So I'm surprised it didn't get considered a fantasy romance or fan romance, I think is what they call it, or romance fantasy or whatever it is that they call it these days. This book was extremely enjoyable read, listen. And actually, I listened to it on Audible, and I would say it's probably almost better to listen to it on Audible than it is to read it, because as an American born American English speaking person, it was fun to listen to the British and the Irish accents, because it does translate across those two countries, as well as there's a little bit of French in there, but it's mostly life in Ireland, and that accent is a little bit different than the American English accent, of course. So that book wraps up all the books that I've read so far, including the one DNF, and now I am starting to listen to African writer, and I'm going to butcher her name because it is not one that rolls off the tongue. It is written by Nindi Okoforo, and I think she's from a West African country, but I'm not sure which one, and I apologize. But this is definitely a fantasy book. It's I'll tell you what they say about it. It's magical yet tainted. 2074 West Africa, E.G. Ubuge seeks justice for the politician's father's death, blending technology with mysticism, revenge or more, read to unravel. It is one of those books that it's definitely, I mean, it's set in Niger, Africa in the year 2074. There's some things that have happened that are post-apocalyptic in the world that it's happened. This came out in 2023. It is a science fiction genre, and it was the Strand Science Fiction Pick of the Month for October 2023. And the Strand is a big bookstore up in New York City. So I'm reading her book. It is looking like it's a duology. So there's another book that follows this one. I'm in the middle of reading this. I think I'm almost, I wouldn't say I'm halfway through, but I'm a definite good third through the book, and I'm just finding it very interesting to listen/read to as well. All right, so that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you enjoyed the format of the video, if you thought there was too many things covered, not enough covered, like what was covered, let me know. Thank you so much for staying to the end if you made it to the end, and until next time, stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye.